Namaskar. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Pradeep Gokhale from Central University of Tibetan Studies, Sarnath. The module that we are going to discuss now is entitled Shabda Pramana and the possibility of its reduction to Anumana. The module has been written by Professor Amal Kumar Har from Cooch Behar University. As a preliminary, we can say that in this particular course, we are primarily concerned with Anumana Pramana, but we are also concerned with other Pramanas insofar as they are related to Anumana or they are reducible to Anumana. And therefore, we are going to discuss in this module the nature of Shabda Pramana, because there are some schools of philosophy which claim that Shabda Pramana is reducible to Anumana. And therefore, we will have to understand the nature of Shabda Pramana and also consider the possibility of its reduction to Anumana. If we just have a broad survey of Pramanas which have been accepted in different systems of Indian philosophy, then we can say that extreme empiricist Charvakas accept only perception as Pramana. Then there are more learned Charvakas who are ready to accept inference of a certain kind as Pramana in addition to perception. Similarly, Vaisheshika and Buddhism are two major schools which accept perception and inference as the two Pramanas. Other schools of Indian philosophy come forward with different forms of knowledge which according to them cannot be explained fully in terms of perception and inference, and therefore they add Shabda Pramana and many other Pramanas. For example, Sankhya and Yoga accept three Pramanas: perception, inference and verbal testimony. Nyaya accepts four Pramanas: perception, inference, analogy and verbal testimony. Prabhakara Mimamsa school accepts five Pramanas: perception, inference, analogy, verbal testimony and postulation. And Bhatta Mimamsa school as well as Advaita Vedanta school accepts six Pramanas: perception, inference, analogy, verbal testimony, postulation and non-apprehension. On the other hand, we have Jainism which accepts verbal testimony as a form of indirect knowledge. Now, about Shabda Pramana, about the nature of Shabda Pramana, there are some controversies. Among those schools which accept Shabda as additional Pramana had internal differences regarding the nature of Shabda Pramana. For example, whether Shabda is to be regarded as eternal or non-eternal, whether Vedas are to be regarded as having an author or they are to be regarded as authorless, that is Paurusheya or Apaurusheya. But I mean, in this way there are different controversies, but these schools are one on the point that Shabda has to be accepted as an additional Pramana, as an independent Pramana. As against this, there are two important schools, namely Vaisheshika and Buddhism. And of course, Charvakas also will join them. They would reduce Shabda to Anumana. So the present module is devoted to this controversy. Now let us first understand Mimamsa approach to Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana is knowledge obtained through words. Now these words have a double face. On the one side, they are sounds and are perceived by sense of hearing. As such, they are only objects of perception. But on the other side, Shabdas, that is words, mean objects as facts rather than facts other than themselves, and these objects or facts are not perceived by our ear but yet cognized by us through the words. Hence, words are understood not as mere sounds but as meaning objects different from the words. Hence, verbal knowledge becomes a distinct way of knowing. Now, according to Mimamsakas, verbal knowledge is not reducible to inference. There is no major premise involved in the process of understanding the meaning of a word. There is no perceivable, invariable connection between a word and the object it means or denotes. That is because the meaning relation is eternal or conventional according to them. Now, one may say that in the case of verbal knowledge, error is possible, but then Mimamsakas would say that the possibility of error is common to verbal knowledge and other forms of knowledge. It is true that through language one can give false information and mislead a person. That is, verbal knowledge can be false, but the possibility of being false is not peculiar to verbal knowledge. Perception and other forms of knowledge also may be false, even if the person communicating knowledge to us is honest and truthful. He himself may be mistaken. Now we come to the important doctrines of Mimamsakas regarding Shabda Pramana. One doctrine is that Shabda is eternal, and the other doctrine is that Shabda understood as Vedas or Veda Pramana is infallible. So, first point about eternality. The Mimamsa believed in the eternality of the Vedas, which were originally orally transmitted. It was thought that the Veda consisted of meaning-bearing sounds. As the Veda was considered to be eternal, its sounds also were considered to be eternal. So all the Vedic words were considered to be eternal and their meanings also to be eternally fixed. Mimamsa further believes that the Veda is infallible and absolutely reliable, as it is apaurusheya. It is not composed by any person. Persons are fallible and not always reliable because they have self-interest. But the Veda has no self-interest. It is eternally present in the universe but is revealed to some persons. What is of primary importance is that which is revealed, but not the persons to whom it is revealed. Now, about verbal knowledge, there is another point of controversy. Namely, we have to distinguish between Vedic verbal knowledge, which is Vedic, and verbal knowledge, which is non-Vedic. Now, Vedas manifest their own validity. Words used by us denote things that can be cognized by other means of knowledge. If we cannot know them through other means, then those who utter them must be of unquestionable authority. So, non-Vedic utterances do not possess any inherent validity. Prabhakara, one of the great Mimamsa philosopher, holds in Prakarana Panchika that non-Vedic verbal cognition is of the nature of inference. Only the verbal cognition afforded by the Veda is strictly verbal. Udayana in Kusumanjali also alludes to such a view. There is another interesting controversy regarding language or regarding Shabda Pramana. The question is, how does a sentence convey its meaning? About that there are two theories which have been discussed in Purva Mimamsa. One theory is called Anvitabhidhanavad and the other theory is called Abhihitanvayavad. Anvitabhidhanavad is the view that the meanings of words can be known only when they occur in a sentence enjoining some duty, and so words denote objects only as related to the other factors of such a sentence. So Prabhakara accepts this view. He is known for Anvitabhidhanavad. And the other view is called Abhihitanvayavad, according to which the knowledge of meanings is due to words taken in their denotation. Words denote meanings which, when combined, give rise to knowledge of the sentence. Kumarila and Kumarila's followers accept this view. Then there is a question about the nature of the word meaning. According to Mimamsa, the words directly mean the universal, that is jati. The individual can be referred to a word only through the universal. The example is, take the expression, bring a horse for sacrifice. Now, this sentence does not mean this or that particular horse, but any horse. So, the word horse does not refer to an individual horse, but horse in general. So, universal horse, you can say. Mimamsa holds that the four parts of the Veda, that is Brahmana part, and Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad, they are the four parts of the Vedas. Out of them, Brahmana part is the most important. Its sentences express commands leading men to action, and the injunctions are called vidhis. The view that the kernel of the Veda consists of declarations in injunctive form is not wholly shared by the Vedanta. Its adherents admit also the authority of the non-injunctive Vedic texts. As for the eternality of the words, we have a dissidence of the Naiyayikas, who, we shall see, say that the Vedas had an author. This was in accordance with their causal view of existence. Now we shall come to consider the Nyaya view of Shabda a little later, but in the meantime we propose to view some of other views on the matter. Now regarding the meaning of words, while Mimamsakas hold that the word means primarily the universal, the Naiyayikas maintain that it means the universal, the structure and also the individual. That is jati, akruti and vyakti. Take an example. If we ask a man to bring a cow, he will not be able to understand that he has to bring an individual cow. He brings the animal because he understands by the word an individual object characterized by a particular structure and a particular universal, namely cowness. The Naiyayikas hold the doctrine of Abhihitanvayavad, according to which the meanings of uttered words get related. So, words themselves have meanings, then they get related, as against Prabhakara's view, which is called the doctrine of Anvitabhidhanavad, which holds that when the words are uttered, the meanings of these words are already related with each other. Then Naiyayikas accept extrinsic validity as against intrinsic validity of Shabda Pramana. So Mimamsakas accept intrinsic validity of Shabda Pramana, whereas Naiyayikas accept extrinsic validity. The Naiyayikas define Shabda Pramana as Aptavakya. They say that the words must be words of one who is interested in our welfare and is trustworthy. The most trustworthy of all persons is God, who composed the Vedic scriptures. Since God composed them, they are absolutely true and reliable. Other persons are reliable to a degree. Now, what are Naiyayikas to say about the distinction between Laukika words and Vaidika words? According to Naiyayikas, words can be classified into Laukika and Vaidika. The words of the Veda, being the words of God Himself, are absolutely trustworthy. Their meanings are fixed by God and are therefore not conventional in the ordinary sense of the term. While the Mimamsakas hold that the Vedas are not composed by anyone, not even by God, and are eternal. The Naiyayikas maintained that God is the author of the Vedas and that they are eternal in the sense that their composer is eternal. But the Laukika words, that is the words of the conventional language, are not always trustworthy because the conventions are created by ordinary persons. So this is about the Nyaya position about Shabda Pramana. Now we come to Sankhya position. Particularly here we are talking about their position about Veda Pramanya. The Sankhya accepts the three Pramanas, namely perception, inference and scriptural testimony, that is Agama. Its views about Veda Pramanya are different from those of Nyaya and Mimamsa. It maintains that the Veda was not composed by any one person or by God, but it embodies the insights of many great seers or rishis. There is a novelty in the Sankhya rejection of the thesis of Apaurusheyattva of the Veda. The Vedas are not the composition of persons, since there are not any persons who can be their authors. The released have no concern with the Vedas, and the unreleased are not competent for the work. But Sankhyas also hold that Vedas are not eternal. The Veda is not eternal as the Mimamsakas contend. No sound, not even the word of the Veda, is eternal. Vedas are not eternal since they possess the character of effects. Letters perish after they are pronounced. When we say it is the same letter, we mean that it belongs to the same genus. Sound, on account of its character as effect, is said to be non-eternal, simply because the Vedas are not of personal origin. We cannot infer that they are eternal, since a sprout is not eternal, though has not a personal origin. So here an interesting point is that even though Sankhya accepts the Veda as a means to knowledge, but without openly opposing it, adopts the process of sapping its foundations. Now we come to Advaita view, according to which again there is supremacy of Vedic testimony. Advaitins generally follow the Mimamsa in their explanations of the forms of the valid means of knowledge. Like Kumarila Bhatta accepted 6 Pramanas, Advaita Vedantins also accept 6 Pramanas. But there is one doctrine peculiar to the Advaita. According to it, if there is conflict between inference and scriptural testimony, we should accept the latter and reject the former. The other Vedantins, such as Ramanuja, do not want to reject any of the valid means of knowledge. So they say that in case of conflict, they should be reconciled and none of them should be treated as false at any level. So Advaita Vedanta holds that the Vedic testimony is superior to the evidence of the senses or the conclusions of reason, though of course it is useless in the regions open to perception and inference. So there is a statement attributed, which is found in Shankara's Brahma Sutra Bhashya, 100 texts cannot make fire cold. Now, the question is therefore, what is the relation between inference and verbal testimony, or inference and Vedic scriptures according to Advaita Vedanta? For Shankara, the job of tarka, that is reasoning, is to support and strengthen the position of scriptures. Hence, we see that Shankara tries to confirm scriptural statement by rational arguments. Anubhava is the vital spiritual experience which can be communicated only through the language of imagination, and Shruti is the written code embodying it. Without the background of the experience, the statement of the Shruti is mere sound without sense. The authoritativeness of the Shruti is derived from the fact that it is but the expression of experience, and since experience is of a self-certifying character, the Vedas are said to be their own proof, requiring no support from elsewhere, that is, pramanyam nirapeksham. Now, the Vedantic point of view highlights the point that Shruti, even though a distinct means of valid cognition, having for its domain the supersensuous realities, is not altogether unrelated to other pramanas like perception and inference. A mysticism which ignores the claims of the understanding would no doubt be doomed. Ramanuja admits that reason may be employed in support of scripture. So generally we find that Vedantins try to give reasons, give tarka in order to support scriptures. Now, so far we have discussed the way in which Shabda Pramana is understood, Veda Pramana or Veda Pramanya is understood in orthodox schools. Now, when we come to heterodox schools, we mainly come across Jainism, which accepts Shabda Pramana. Out of the three heterodox schools, namely Jainism, Buddhism and Charvaka, we can say that Jainism insists on Agama Pramana, Shabda Pramanya in some way, as that is, Jainism accepts Agama as an independent Pramana, as a separate Pramana, whereas Buddhists do not accept Shabda as an independent Pramana. They try to reduce Shabda to Anumana, and Charvakas, either you can say they do not accept Shabda Pramana at all, or they would also say that Shabda Pramana is reducible to Anumana Pramana. So, among heterodox schools, Jainism is the most important school which talks about Agama Pramana. Now, the Jainas have the concept of Agama for scriptural knowledge. Agama is verbal knowledge obtained from words. Verbal knowledge is Shruta Pramana and is included in indirect knowledge, that is Paroksha Jnana, Paroksha Pramana. So, they classify Pramana into Pratyaksha and Paroksha, and under Paroksha Pramana they include Agama as one of the Pramanas. Yasho Vijaya in the Jaina Tarka Bhasha says that the knowledge obtained from my friend's statement, there is a pen in the desk, is valid for ordinary purposes but not for cognizing ultimate truth, Tattvataha. So, Jainas would again talk about that verbal testimony which gives ordinary information necessary for daily life, and that Shabda Pramana which talks about ultimate truth. So, that will be something which is on par with Vedas. So, in orthodox schools we talk about Vedas, either Upanishads or Brahmanas, which deal with the so-called ultimate reality, and in Jainism we will talk of Agama, the scriptures which talk about ultimate reality. Now, according to the Jaina view, scripture or Agama is composed by a person. So, here in Astika tradition we will say that Vedas are either composed by God or we will say that Vedas are Apaurusheya. Whereas when we are coming to Jainism, we will not say either that Jainas will not say that their agamas are either composed by God, because Jainas do not accept the existence of God, and Jainas cannot also say that the agamas are Apaurusheya, that is authorless, because they would say that agamas are certainly composed by a person, but then how do those agamas get authenticity? They would say that the composer or the author of the agamas is omniscient, dispassionate, and he is beyond ignorance. So he is Sarvajna, and because of his Sarvajnatva and because of his Karuna and the agama, that is his words, get authenticity. The words of only such a person are absolutely true and valid. Jainas naturally hold that the scriptures of Jainism alone are absolutely true, but not those of others. Like the Nyaya and the Vaisheshika, the Jainas say that the scriptures must be composed by some person, Purusha, but unlike them, they say that this person is not God, but the leader of their own religion. Now, their doctrine of verbal knowledge, that is Shruta, is interesting in that they treat part of it as coming under direct cognition and part under the indirect cognition, and the latter agreed a part as fallible and the other agama as infallible. So, within Shruta, we can talk of fallible and infallible, and they would also say that the Shruta Jnana is partly perceptual and partly indirect. Now we come to Buddhist approach to verbal knowledge. Buddhists do not accept verbal knowledge as a distinct means of valid cognition. They do not accept the Mimamsa view that the Veda was not composed by any person, for there can be no book not composed by any person. So, if there is a text, if there is a book, a scripture, it must be composed by a person, according to Buddhists. Then they reject the Nyaya view that Vedas were composed by God. For Buddhists, it is obviously known that Buddhists would deny the existence of God. Now, in spite of all this, if they accept the authoritativeness of a text, then it must be because it was composed by a reliable person. So, for Buddhists, there is only one reliable person. Ultimately, there is only one reliable person, that is the Buddha. So, Buddha's teachings or words, they ought to be accepted according to Buddhists. Now, in this verbal knowledge, there is a process. So, Buddhists would say that first we hear words, and hearing of words is perceptual, but later on the basis of that we understand meaning, and also on the basis of that we understand truth. So, here what operates according to them is inference, and therefore they would say that there is no scope for verbal testimony as an independent pramana. Now, this issue was dealt with by Dignaga and then by Dharmakirti. Dignaga, how he argued, in keeping with his position of accepting only two pramanas, namely Pratyaksha and Anumana, Dignaga argues that when we speak of credible assertion, we mean either that the person who utters it is credible, or that the fact that he utters is credible. So, either you focus on the person and say that because the person is credible, therefore the fact that he has asserted is credible, or you may say that the fact that he asserted is credible for some other reasons. So, if it is the former, we have a case of inference. If it is the latter, we have a case of perception. Now, the Dharmakirti also discussed elaborately the nature of what is called Shabda Pramana, or how language operates, how we know on the basis of Shabda Pramana. For Dharmakirti, it is not the question of inferring meanings or objects from words, because in communication process, what the hearer understands is the intention of the speaker, vivaksha of the speaker. So, what is the relation between, so when I hear, somebody speaks and I hear that, what I understand is what the speaker wants to say. Now, what the speaker wants to say is vivaksha. Vivaksha is the cause, and what the speaker actually says is the effect. So, there is cause-effect relationship between intention and expression. So, when I understand the intention of the speaker, it is through a kind of inference. So, the hearer infers the cause, namely intention of the intended meaning or the intended meaning, from the effect, that is the uttered sentence. Next stage is that of knowing an objective truth through the sentence. Now, this is again a case of inference. Having known the intended meaning, we can infer it to be true if we know the intended meaning of the speaker. Then we can infer that he was speaking truth if we know that the person is reliable. So, here again it will be another type of vyapti, that whatever the person says must be reliable, and the person has said so and so, therefore it must be reliable. So, again it will be a kind of inference. So, here in Dharmakirti's theory, we can say that it is a two-stage process. In the first stage, it is the inference of the intended meaning of the speaker, and in the second stage, it is the knowledge of the reliability of what the person says based on his aptatva, based on the reliability of the person. Buddhists do not take it for granted that a particular person or a particular text is reliable as a self-evident truth. For example, the Buddha was a reliable person for them. A reliable person, says Dharmakirti, is one who has knowledge of the ultimate truth, who knows what is to be sought for and what is to be avoided, and who is infinitely compassionate. He is one who has gone the right way, Sugata, and who knows and teaches the four Aryan truths. Such a person is Buddha, and his teachings are reliable because of this. Now, according to Dharmakirti, the Buddha's teachings can be verified by experience and inference. Hence, there are checks and balances in respect of Dharmakirti's accommodation of Shabda as one may have from an apta. There is the great saying of the Buddha. There is a statement that just as a goldsmith cuts, rubs and melts the precious metal, so should one test the teacher's teachings without adhering to reverential authority. Now we come to the Vaisheshika approach. Vaisheshikas also hold that Shabda Pramana is reducible to Anumana. Kanada, the author of Vaisheshika Sutra, holds that there are only two primary means to knowledge, perception and inference. He contends that the verbal knowledge need not be given a separate place or status. Knowledge obtained from words is only a combination of perception and inference. We perceive the sounds that constitute speech and infer their meanings from them. For the same reason, he does not accept upamana as understood either by Nyaya or Mimamsa. Like the Nyaya, he rejects Arthapatti and Anupalabdhi as independent means to knowledge, which are accepted by Mimamsa. So there is a well-known statement in this context, particularly with reference to Shabda and Upamana. Shabdopamanayor naiva pruthak pramanyam ishyate अनुमानगतार्थत्वात् iti vaisheshikam matam. Meaning is, verbal testimony and analogy have no separate status as pramana because they become superfluous due to inference. This is the view of Vaisheshikas. It was believed in the Nyaya Vaisheshika tradition that the Vedic scriptures give us real knowledge and not mere speculation. It is knowledge of things as they are, and in this sense has no beginning, though it is always directly known and realized by some beings in its entirety and by others in part. The Vedas as collection of sentences presuppose intelligent authors, and they must be possessors of complete and accurate knowledge of heaven and unseen destiny, that is Adrushtam. Gradually this authorship was assigned to God. The authoritativeness of the Vedas follows from their being the word of God. Tad vachanad amnayasya pramanyam. Although Kanada accepts two means of valid knowledge, he seems to have no objection to accept memory or smriti. He gives a classification of knowledge in which he includes arshadhyana and smriti. Arshadhyana is the insight of seers. If remembrance is ignored, since it only reproduces what has already been experienced, and if intuitive wisdom is brought under perception, then we have, according to the Vaisheshika, only two sources of knowledge, namely intuition and inference. So, in this way, we have seen how Buddhists and Vaisheshikas try to reduce Shabda Pramana to Anumana. For more information about this particular theme, you can read the e-text and also see the references which are given at the end of the e-text. Thank you.